Welcome to Tuesday Talks. I'm Seema Kumar. Today, we'll discuss the growing health and life science community in New York City and its rapid expansion. My guest today is Viq Pervaaz, the Senior Vice President of Life Sciences and Healthcare at New York Economic Development Corporation. Viq leads the Life Sciences and Healthcare team and is driving the city's billion-dollar Life Science New York City initiative aimed at creating jobs and positioning New York City as a global leader in life sciences. Welcome to Tuesday Talks and
Thanks,
welcome
Seema.
to Cure, Viq.
Thanks. It's always a pleasure to sit down with you, so this is really great.
I know. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah.
Now, before we get into it, first of all, congratulations on joining the EDC in your new role. What, you're 7 weeks in?
Yeah. I mean, I'm honored and humbled together, and those aren't just words. I mean, to be at the nexus of my passion for science, which is my pedigree, and to be able to impart that in my hometown where I was born, there's no better job for me.
Wow. Yeah. Sounds like you landed your dream job. Now, before this, you've had executive level roles in healthcare, life sciences, wellness business operations, and consulting. I mean, this is a non-for-profit world, right? What made you move to a non-for-profit at this stage in your career?
Yeah, I think, but I think exactly for the reasons you've stated, right? I think we progress our career and we build strength on strength. And I've been fortunate enough to have a variety of experiences. I'm a pharmacist by my undergrad education. I've worked in the lab in R&D, regulatory affairs. I've led a CRO in clinical development. So those experiences, I think, have really brought me to this point of, without being cliche, giving back. And again, I think it's important, all of us, I think none of us are forced to do that, right? Mm-hmm. It comes from inside. And I think I was at a stage in my career where I felt it important that I want to take these experiences that I've been so, fortunate to have had and give back somehow to our community.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, it's non-for-profit, but it's not necessarily charitable, right? This is all about building businesses in New York City, in the life sciences arena, as well as creating jobs and economic growth, and making New York City the envy of Boston and San Francisco, right? Silicon Valley. Yeah. Now, you recently published a thesis called Authenticity in the Workplace. Very interesting. And it says, authenticity in the workplace, what does it really mean? So what does this really mean?
Does it really mean?
What is your thesis? Yes.
Be careful about the branding of your thesis title. We'll come back to you. I think it was such a nebulous word, and I think we all experienced it when we were going through the pandemic, and even before the pandemic, this word was being used quite rapidly and with increasing emphasis. And I think when even my own organization, when we were using it, I was sort of curious about what does this mean? I know what it means to be authentic, but are we putting some bounds around it? Because authenticity can be from 0 to 60 and everything in between. And so when I did break for school and had an opportunity to research it, what we came up with is that it's important, while it cannot be precisely defined universally, right? Every organization is different. Every organization has a different mission, different cultural norms. But what it is important to do is to anchor it into the nucleus of your organization. And based on my research, we define that as the mission and purpose of your organization. It's also important to be flexible, right? So what your nucleus of your organization is today in this rapidly changing and evolving world that we're living in, you have to have that anchor be loose enough to be pliable to what's happening outside of your organization. I think the other realization that we came to is that line of demarcation between what's in your organization, what's outside of your organization, is blurring. And it's not necessarily because of the pandemic, although I think that may have accelerated with this hybrid approach, but also with our modes of communication, right? It's not that, you walk into a physical place and you're in the bounds of your organization and then you walk out and you're in the real world. And I think that's going to increasingly dissipate. So this ability to sort of put some parameters and perimeter around what authenticity is permissible within an organization is important, because at the end of the day, we're all here to work on the mission of our organization. That's our primary objective when we're aligned with an organization. So that's not to say that you can't be authentic, But when you're in the guise of a workplace, it's important to remember that you're working towards the mission of that organization.
So how does it differ from like not being authentic? I mean, what's the difference?
Yeah, I think the point is not that you shouldn't be authentic or be yourself. The point is around understanding.
What's not authentic, for example?
So, yeah, I didn't delve into that. I think what the thesis focused on is everything allowed within the bounds of a workplace? Because that can be disruptive. And we saw over the course of the last 8 years or so, people are quite passionate about how they feel about different issues going on in our nation and in the world. And there's no reason why they're not allowed to express their authenticity. But when it comes into impacting the mission of an organization and the productivity of an organization and disrupting an organization not in a positive way, then I think it's clear to establish some policies and what I termed in the thesis perimeters and parameters around what's permissible. And that line and that litmus test is it impacting the purpose and mission of an organization?
Yes.
And if it is, then perhaps the workplace is not the right forum to express your authenticity.
I think that's a really good boundary to have, right? So, I mean, just taking some very silly example, right? Yes, you can wear a dress, or you can wear pants, or you could wear, some other clothing that is ethnically more, something of your preference. But you do have to wear clothes when you come to work.
Yeah, I mean, it's an extreme example.
You can't come without clothes.
Yeah,
Yes.
but Seema, it's an extreme example. But what a strong example to bring the case home, right?
Yeah.
That when we are in the guise of a workplace, your role, my role, anyone else that we know, we have a contract to the organization to build that business forward. For me, it's the New York City Economic Development Corps. For you, it's finding a cure for cancer, right? And when things start
And for many other diseases.
And for many other diseases,
Yes.
of course. But when things start impacting that in terms of how we're behaving, how we're expressing ourselves, and it starts interfering with that mission, causing disruption to that, causing disruption to our colleagues, then I think that's where these policies and parameters are very important.
Speaking of parameters and blurring of boundaries, the in thing nowadays, and this is something that we're going to have to live with and accept, is AI and machine learning,
Yes.
right? Artificial intelligence, which, as we know, on the positive side, it is creating a lot of new possibilities. It's going to really remove the burden for healthcare workers, frontline healthcare workers, the administrative burden, and for physicians who can actually focus, and nurses who can focus on doing what they do best, which is serving the patients instead of doing paperwork. And on the other side, there's drug discovery and clinical development. We're sort of making drug discovery, we're accelerating drug discovery. And as you know, the Nobel Prize went to scientists who discovered AI,
Yes.
and AlphaFold is an example of
Yes.
some, big step change in how we do drug discovery and development. And also there are companies in this ecosystem at Cure which are actually doing great work in this arena, including in silico medicine. So what do you think New York City holds in terms of place for AI ML to be a leader in the world? Because I think that that's a unique ability, because we are in the tech corridor.
Yeah, I mean, I think you framed the question really well. I think it's going to be very difficult to do drug discovery or clinical development without the use of AI ML. On the flip side, I think it's important for us to understand, again, demystifying the term AI, right? Because it's used quite prevalently, similar to authenticity back in the day when I started the thesis. So it's very important, I think, to understand as we progress down this path of saying AI, ML, what are we looking to achieve, right? And you gave some really good examples of some R&D companies that are really facilitating drug discovery. So the ability to use AI, ML algorithms to find the right targets in early drug discovery. The use of AI, ML applied to genomic data for precision medicine, which I know is very close to Cure's mission. The ability of AI, ML in clinical development to target the right patients so that you have increased recruitment rates and better retention rates, so that lowers the cost burden. It gets drugs to market faster, right? So I think for me, it's being very precise in understanding what applications are occurring. That's the first step. As we're building out the ecosystem, I think one data point that I'm really proud of is LifeSci NYC under the New York City Economic Development Corps from 2019 to today, we've doubled from about 300 to 700 R&D stage companies in the New York City ecosystem. And we have a target of 1,000 by 2030. And I think what we're focused on is this intersectionality between AI, ML to facilitate drug discovery for these R&D stage companies. And that could be drug development or clinical development. What we're also focused on is this concept of wet and dry lab, right? So wet lab, as we are all familiar with, the traditional lab environment that I worked in, I know you have. But next to it, maybe literally, maybe figuratively, you've got the data scientist and the AI ML scientists working in tandem. So it's not that, okay, let me do this point of drug discovery and let's send it over to someone, and then you're collaborating together, which lends efficiency to the drug development process. And I think we have real-life examples of drug discovery being reduced from 8 years to 8 months, right? And that's not fiction anymore, that's reality. And how do we continue to build on that? That's going to be our focus in New York City.
Yeah, that's great, because I think that, like we said at the beginning, Silicon Valley is known for technology. Boston is known for biotech. I think New York has the ability to marry both.
Yeah, and New York City is, under the radar, but is quite a tech hub, right?
Yeah.
It always has been. So it's on par with any of the other hubs that exist. And then when you combine that with the number of students that are coming out of the health sciences from premier universities in New York City, you combine that with the incubator spaces that already exist and will continue to grow. And you combine that with a very precise strategy of what the future looks like, I think you have all the ingredients for something really spectacular.
That's absolutely great, and we're looking for more spectacularity in the coming years. You recently wrapped up a fabulous program with GenSpace, right? The world's first community biology lab called Break into Biotech, right? Tell us more about what it is and how this hands-on program really helps adults who want to learn how to enter into New York City's biotech sector.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to thank you, Seema, first for that, because you've been a big part of GenSpace and you've opened up your campus. So first of all, thank you. The reason why I was smiling when you were asking the question is this program is very close to my heart.
Yeah.
This concept of the democratization of science, right? That it's not for people who have gone to pharmacy school or med school or done biomedical research, but it's for everyone. And the ability to open it up and say, you know what, maybe you didn't have an opportunity to experience what science is, but it's not too late. And I love, love, love this concept. And anyone who's involved with that, I just hope that we continue to build on this. We're very proud that we just closed our 3rd cohort. And as you said, it is open to people who have never touched science, but yet want to get involved and contribute into the life science ecosystem. I had the great fortune of being on a panel at GenSpace just last Thursday. And I'll share a story with you. There was someone who, at the end of the panel, came up to me and had never experienced science and was very open about their story of saying, I never had the opportunity. I'd heard about it. I was on the periphery, always interested, but didn't know. And then as the years went on, I was scared to get involved. And then GenSpace came along, his words, not mine, and everything changed. And the beauty of that evening, the highlight for me was he showed, he's working on a genetic sequencing project. And then when he understood that I had a lab background, opened up his phone and started showing me his research. And the excitement on his face, that to me was everything about the success of GenSpace. I think that summarizes it.
That's great. That's wonderful. And the fact that it's, for adults and, it's not too late to learn. As you know, some people learned genomics and genetics after having been in a different career.
Yeah.
And then were able to marry up two different paths to do something extraordinary.
Yeah.
So one of the other goals for the EDC is to grow the health and life sciences community here, right?
Yes.
And the talent pool,
Yes.
which is, already great, but you want a multiplier effect for this talent pool. And you just completed your 1,000th internship program?
Almost.
With life science?
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so almost, how far away?
It's going to be this cohort.
This
Yeah,
cohort,
yeah.
okay. So talk a little bit about
Yeah.
the kinds of jobs that, people from here, from that kind of
Yeah.
internship program land in.
Yeah, I mean, just another thing that our team is doing that I'm so incredibly proud of. So, this is an internship program that's been going on for a number of years. As you highlighted, Seema, we're going to hit our 1,000th intern very soon, and there's going to be a big splash around that, as there should be. I mean, it's a moment of celebration for New York City. Maybe I'll start with some data points that are very important to me. If you look at the entire cohort of interns so far, over 50% are women. Over 70% are individuals of color. 40% are from, New York's public universities. So we're really touching the underrepresented communities in STEM and pulling them in. So when we speak about building out our ecosystem, we have to look at it from a three-dimensional perspective. And it can't be just, okay, it's just numbers. When you double-click behind the numbers, are we being socially conscious? Are we being impactful to our communities that we live in and love? And this internship program is a testimony to how strongly we feel about that. 40% of the interns get offers for the companies that they have worked for and interned for. I mean, these are amazing statistics, and we continue to grow on that. One of the things that we intend to launch pretty soon is these interns telling their own stories, very briefly and very quickly, about the impact that the internship program had on them. And we intend for this to just, generate more excitement and pull more individuals into the program. And how this impacts our talent pool, it's very strategic, right? Because we do want our talent pool to represent, when you're in a senior STEM role, your community can look at you and say, yes, that's possible.
Yep.
And I will do that.
Yep. If you can see it, you can be it.
Perfectly said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we talk always about a biotech mecca being Boston. What will it take for New York City to become that? Is there anything standing in our way?
Yeah, well, I am of the opinion that I don't want to compare myself to other hubs. The last 2 years I lived in Kendall, so I'm very familiar with that ecosystem, and I think it has a lot of benefits to contributing to the progression of science. But when I came to the EDC, I made a very firm statement that I don't want to be another ecosystem. I want New York City to be its own ecosystem with its own value prop, with its own differentiators, many of which we've already spoken about. We have an incredible talent pool coming from the top universities. We have all the incubator space. We are strategic in thinking about the integration of AI, ML, and traditional science. It's all there. So I respect all of the other incubators and hubs, innovation hubs that are out there, but New York is different and will continue to be different in this respect as well.
Yes, we are likewise, thinking that New York is going to be unique and differentiated, and it's always a pleasure for us here at CURE, partnering with the EDC and getting the support from the EDC as we come together to build this ecosystem. It's already flourishing, but we want to actually grow it exponentially, right? And speaking of exponential goals, And before we go, I wanted to ask you what's on the docket for 2025? How can we grow the ecosystem and your programs exponentially?
Yeah, I mean, one more point on the Boston Innovation Hub. I mean, the New York Yankees will always rule, and we are differentiated from the Boston Red Sox. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear to all of our viewers.
I recently went to the grocery store with an old Red Sox hat, and everybody gave me a stare, and I wondered what was going on, and I took my hat off, and then I was cool.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I'm a diehard Yankees fan, so I had to make that little plug, although this year wasn't our best. No, I mean, look, for 2025, I think we've touched on a lot of the things that I'm passionate about. So I think an increased focus on our internship program, focusing on the workforce and the talent pool, making sure that there's awareness around it, and the best way to do that is through storytelling. More to come on our 1,000th intern, but that will be a big celebration for the internship program, for the interns that have already gone through the program, and for the city itself. I think really an intent focus on how do we share data, anonymized data, to have impact on patient outcomes. How do we share anonymized data to have impact on health metrics? So as you know, Seema, there's been a lot of energy around this for years. This is not a new topic. But I think we're at a juncture now where AI ML is progressing so fast. Everyone is taking the benefit of it. And I think the time has come to have a serious conversation. And maybe we start with a roundtable to say, how do we do this? How do we do this in pilot form where we may prove through a proof of concept study that this is possible, and data is protected, and then there's end benefit to the patient and others in the ecosystem as well. So more to come on that in 2025, but that's on the docket as well, to use your term. I think a lot more excitement in terms of how we're building out our ecosystem with this integration of dry and wet lab space. And what does that look like, right?
So you're imagining them like side by side?
Side by side,
Yeah.
Literally, and side by side, maybe figuratively. We have a beautiful, beautiful ecosystem that already exists that's well connected. We're on the west side, we're on the east side. But if you asked me, if you gave me a white sheet of paper and said, draw your dream lab, this would be it. It would be side by side. Doesn't apply to everyone, but I think, again, as we think about the future of drug and clinical development, it's hard to extract one from the other. I think there's a lot of energy in the pharma industry, the biopharma industry, around cold storage and cold supply chain, and how can New York City play into that? I think look forward to some conversations and discussions on that. And I think finally, just leveraging the incredible clinical patient pool that we have in New York City. And how does that fit into the ecosystem that we're building? When you're doing clinical studies, therapy-naive patients are what most are looking for, right, in phase 2 and 3. And we have that in New York. We have a very diverse population. How do we bridge the gap in health equity, not only downstream in marketed product, but upstream in clinical development? So, when we think about the ecosystem, I think, of course, our impact is economic impact to New York City through jobs, through building companies here. And we're doing that. We're doing that quite successfully, but also have community and patient impact. That's part of our mission as well, and it's very close to my heart, and look forward to contributing to that in 2025.
Yeah, and ultimately it's all about cures.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Isn't it? What does cure mean to you?
I think it's a great question. And I want to start, maybe I'll start the answer by, again, thanking you and the Cure team. You're such incredible partners to the EDC and to our ecosystem. And I hope, all of our viewers understand the work and the impact that you're doing. And I really mean that. It's just what we need more of in our ecosystems.
Thank you.
I think Cure means putting our earnest efforts towards solving diseases Because I say earnest efforts because, it takes more than a village, right? As you know, you're leading this effort. So putting our collective and earnest efforts towards solving difficult diseases that impact patients. And when we say patients, we don't think about the ecosystem around the patients, right? We don't think about the ripple effects typically around how devastating these diseases are, not to one individual, but to the ecosystem around them. And
so to the individuals, to the families, to the communities, to the extended families.
Yeah, and even if we think broader than that, right, to their friends, to the places that they work. Unfortunately, I just learned of a dear, dear friend of mine just a couple of weeks ago that was diagnosed with a very strong cancer.
Wow.
I'll leave it at that. And I remember I was walking up from the subway station to go to work, and I just literally paused. Where it was rush hour, and people were screaming at me to keep walking up the stairs, and I just was frozen. I couldn't even hear them. And this individual is a pretty prominent individual in the health ecosystem. And so you think about that leadership now having to step down and the impact that has to whatever progression we would have, right? It's devastating on so many different dimensions, right? So cure means that we put our earnest and collective efforts, non-selfish efforts, I would say, right, towards one goal. And I think if we do those efforts collectively, we will chip away at it. That's what I think cure is, right? I think the end game, we all know what the end game is in one day.
Yep.
But I think today, we need to say, let's lock arms. Let's put our best, and I keep using the word earnest, which I mean, just from the core of who you are. I want to do this not because it's my job, which it is, right? Not because it's the right thing to do, which it is, but it's coming from something very deep. That's how I see cure.
Well, thank you so much for being here at Cure and for being such an advocate for life sciences and for cures writ large. For more on NYC EDC and also for Cure, go to www.wewillcure.com. And thank you for joining us today for Tuesday Talks. Happy holidays, and here's to 2025. See you next year.